Hello, welcome to the Mike Spence Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Friday to you. Just to quickly recap, because it's been such a long period in between recording. Recorded last Saturday, and now I'm recording this Friday. This is a period where the Mets saw some great highs, concluding with that two-game sweep of the Cleveland Guardians on Sunday, where they... three-game sweep of the Guardians on Sunday, where they swept the doubleheader, thanks to outstanding performances from Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, and their performances really kept the Mets alive. There was a lot of excitement. I know I was going into the series against the Cubs. The Cubs were floundering under 500, still are, but the Mets were expected to kind of make short work of the Cubs, keep the momentum going. In short, they did not. They had an off day on Monday, came into Tuesday and Wednesday looking pretty lifeless, and the result of it all was the Mets losing the first two games of the series, between two pretty mediocre to bad performances from Tyler McGill and Kodai Senga, both of whom looked pretty bad in those games. And that was a little discouraging to see, just because they pitched so well in their last starts the week prior. But coming into this third game against the Cubs, you had Carlos Carrasco on the mound, and Carrasco... Let's say we didn't really know what Carrasco was going to do in this game, and I thought for sure the Mets were going to get swept in this one. Particularly after the first inning, Carrasco gives a solo home run to Dansby Swanson, but miraculously, that was the only issue that Carrasco had from that point on. This was not a brilliant start. I think he was solid at best, but he got the job done, and most importantly, goes deep in this game. And when he got into trouble, which he did get into, he was able to work his way out of the trouble and effectively get out of that without any damage. So his final pitching line: 6 2/3, 5 hits, 1 earned run, only allowed 2 walks. Looked really good. This was definitely the best we've seen of Carrasco. He lowers his ERA, most importantly, down from that very ugly 8-something ERA down to a much more manageable 6.75. And as I said, most importantly, he goes deep. He pitched into the 7th inning. Very few Met starters can say they've done that this year. Carrasco's performance certainly helped, and then he would give way to Adam Ottavino in the 7th inning, which is a telling thing for Ottavino right now, because I don't know where exactly Showalter's level of confidence is with Ottavino, but my assumption is that if he's bringing Ottavino in the 7th, it's not big. It can't be great right now. He's got to be kind of worked back into the 8th inning role, I believe. And right now with Brooks Raley and Drew Smith, I think he feels like he has a good enough combo right now. And we'll see how that goes going forward. So important for them. And then Tommy Hunter, who pitched the final 2 innings of relief. And that's really all I can say. It was good pitching performance overall for the Mets pitching staff last night. Most importantly, the Mets offense really came up, combined for 15 base hits last night. And after the first 2 games where they looked really lifeless, as I said before, it was a big game for Jeff McNeil, who went 3 for 4. Francisco Lindor has been very cold as of late. He would come through with an RBI single late in the game to kind of finish off the scoring, make it 10-1. And important. It was an important win. I loved everything. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Carrasco's pitching performance much needed. And let's talk about the offense, which was outstanding. Came through in the first inning. They get the bases loaded early on, and would come through with Brett Beatty hitting a sac fly center field. Unfortunately, the Mets would not be able to make any more of it, so the Mets were ultimately left with a lot of runners on base in this game, but would come through later on. As I said, Carrasco's only issue was a solo home run given up to Dansby Swanson earlier in that game in the first inning. And from that point on, he was really solid, and the Mets would tack on some runs not that much later. So in the third inning, Jeff McNeil would start off the hitting with a single after they had two outs in that inning. McNeil singles. Alonso would follow up with another bloop single to left center, and then Brett Beatty comes through with a big single right through the infield, which would score Jeff McNeil. And afterwards, Starling Marte comes through with a critical single to the right field as well. So that would score 2, and the Mets are up 4-1. And again, Pete Alonso successfully pitching. Sorry, not Pete Alonso. Carlos Carrasco pitching successfully in this game. Really kept it in line. If Carrasco had been pitching much worse, you have to wonder exactly where they would be. But he would come through in this game critically. In the 5th inning, McNeil would again start off the inning with a single. And then Alonso's hit by a pitch. They would run a double steal. There was a throw into the outfield by the Cubs that led to McNeil scoring. And we have a 5-1 game. And then the big shot of the game in the 7th would come from Pete Alonso, who just keeps on hitting. Alonso had homered earlier in the series for his 18th home run, and then comes up here with a home run to right field, opposite fields. I always like it when Pete goes opposite field, and this home run just kept on traveling. It looked like it was going to be a fly ball to the right, but I guess got a little bit caught in the wind and just kept on traveling. And Alonso hits a 2-run home run, makes it 7-1, his 19th home run this season. Alonso has been scorchingly hot. It's been one of the most incredible things to watch earlier this year, and watching his progression and how well he has played right now is certainly the highlight of the Mets season thus far. And with this game pretty safely averaged in the following inning, Daniel Vogelbach would single, Francisco Alvarez would double to left field, Alvarez stays hot, and then Brian Nimmo with a triple to center, scoring Alvarez and Vogelbach. Nimmo's triple, huge. And then, as I said, Francisco Lindor coming through with an RBI single to kind of finish off the Mets scoring for the day. Mets win 10-1. Big win. I always like seeing those two guys coming through. And while it'll be mentioned probably less than the other guys' exploits, Francisco Alvarez continuing what has been a scorchingly hot stretch for him. He goes 2 for 5 in this game. He has looked outstanding the last few games, and we should talk about now what the Mets' catching situation is, because it's been a subject of some conversation. It's been, in the news lately about what the Mets are supposed to be doing with Alvarez. And it's led to a lot of incredulity from Met fans, basically being like, why would you possibly think about getting rid of Alvarez at this point, because he has been so important for the Mets offense early on this year. Basically, it boils down to no one really knows what exactly to do with Sanchez, Nido, and Alvarez, particularly with Omar Narvaez. And now the Mets made the decision to DFA Gary Sanchez. So Sanchez no longer on the team. Tomas Nido returning from his IL stretch, and he is back on the team, backing up Alvarez, who is now the primary starting catcher. Narvaez, by all counts, should be ready, barring any kind of setback, by the beginning of June. I'm going to say probably after next week. We can expect Narvaez to be back around that time. And when he comes back, here's the situation. Basically, you don't want to have 3 catchers on your team, so what do you do? Technically, they could keep all 3. I guess that's the question. The question really has to boil down to what exactly the Mets think Tomas Nido brings to the team, because I've been pretty open about this. Nido, in my respect, is a good defense catcher. I think he works really well with the team's pitching staff. I do not think he is irreplaceable. I think he's a good glue guy, but that's really it. And if that's the case, then you might as well just get rid of Omar Narvaez in that case, because Francisco Alvarez, as I said before, besides being a terrific offensive player, I think he's made tremendous strides behind the plate. He has looked much better defensively this year. He's not going to win a Gold Glove. I think that's pretty reasonable to expect, but he has more or less defied expectations and has been looking outstanding. I would say probably the second hottest hitter on the team behind Pete Alonso, and you just have to look at the last stretch. I'm going to say like the month of May, really. Actually, if you look at him this month, he is batting .304. He has a 10.42 OPS, 5 home runs, 11 RBIs in the month of May. You send that guy down because Omar Narvaez is back? Unreasonable. I think Met fans would be very upset. I think that they would hear it, and Steve Cohen certainly keeps his ear to the ground in terms of what exactly the Met fans want, and they would not be happy with a combination of Narvaez and Nido, especially right now. I mean, it would be different if Alvarez, knock on wood, was hurt, or if there was some situation where Alvarez was just not playing well. But at this moment, right now, Alvarez is so critical to that lineup. He's hitting perhaps over his head, but like you can't take this guy out of the lineup at the moment. It's really critical that they keep him around, and how well he's played all around, not just offensively but defensively. It's been a big moment for Alvarez, and I would hate to see the Mets come down and make a move that feels disconcertingly Wilponish. I know from the business side of baseball, it does not really pay to keep players when they have options. Certainly make use of their service time and to your advantage. In the Mets' case, they need every advantage that they can. From a playing purpose right now, they need everybody playing at 100%. They need their top players in, because right now it's kind of a house of cards. You don't really know what's going to make the whole thing topple over. And if you pull Alvarez at this point, you make the really risky move of perhaps blowing it all up. And as young as he is, as perhaps unproven as he is, Alvarez has, by all accounts, won the respect of the Mets pitching staff, his Met teammates. He's a young kid. That does not mean that he is the wrong person to keep in the lineup at this moment. So we hope the Mets make the right decision when Narvaez comes back about what to do with this team. And unfortunately, this does mean that perhaps Tomas Nido needs to go. I certainly like Nido. He, as I said, not irreplaceable. There are lots of defensively minded catchers, and he's a solid guy. I think he's really good, but not somebody I would say, okay, we have to keep this guy instead of Narvaez, or we have to keep this guy instead of Alvarez. There's really no question to that. So we will likely see, I think at that point, Tomas Nido maybe make his last go with the Mets. And he might be traded, he might be let go. We'll see how that goes. So the Mets now turn their sights to the Colorado Rockies, and the Rockies, not in a good place. Not dissimilar to the Chicago Cubs. But we kind of saw how that series went. So losing 2-3 to the Rockies in Coors Field would not be ideal. The Mets kind of need to take this momentum from the third game and push it forward, particularly with the Mets pitchers coming up right now. So we now move on to the front of the rotation again, with Scherzer starting game 1 of the series, Verlander game 2, and then goes back to McGill. So we'll see if Scherzer and Verlander can keep the momentum going from their positive performances. It was, by and large, everything that the Mets had kind of been hoping for when they acquired Verlander and were pairing him with Scherzer at the top of the rotation. They were like, we have these two aces, 6 Cy Young awards between the two of them. Why don't we, see how these guys pitch? And it was a great performances from both, and particularly Verlander, who went 8 innings in that last game. And I'm not saying Verlander has to go 8 innings every game, but I would like some similar results. And again, consistency is king at this point. They really need quality performances from their starting pitchers. There cannot be a situation where they're just kind of getting bombed every night. They need these above average performances from their starters, particularly their aces. These are two guys who are being paid combined $86 million. You have to come up with results to justify that kind of contract and that kind of money. So a series against the Colorado Rockies, again, in Coors Field, but against a Rockies lineup that has been pesky but is otherwise not really a quality group, even more so with the Rockies rotation, which is, as always, kind of a dumpster fire. Would probably be the most adequate term to describe the Colorado Rockies starting rotation. I say this now, but we'll see how the Mets lineup is actually performing. Again, consistency will be critical in terms of determining how well they play in this game. So can they keep up the 15-hit barrage that they exhibited in Chicago? We'll see. Fortunately, not that much of a trip from Chicago to Colorado, so I'm hoping that they can keep some semblance of consistency going forward in this point, but it's really up to them as to prove it. And if they enjoy winning streaks, keep it going. That's really the most that we can say at this point, is if you have the players and the talent, which the Mets certainly do, make it happen. Don't let the Colorado Rockies and the Chicago Cubs of the National League push you around, make you work for a third game victory that ultimately means nothing. I mean, you have to really kind of make these work. And series wins, and when you have a 500 record, are critical, particularly if you want to start digging yourself out of this hole that the Mets have put themselves in early on. The Braves at the moment, incredibly, don't have a enormous lead, which is mostly due to the Braves' injuries at the moment, but you have to assume that they are going to continue getting healthy, and the Mets are going to have to kind of work their way back into it. It's really all that we said at this point. So we'll see how they perform against the Rockies. My guess is the Mets should be favored in the first two games of the series. Their game might go either way. Again, it really depends on how everyone performs in game one, and that will kind of dictate how everything goes to the rest of the series against the Rockies. Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.